Today's Dan Le Batard Show is sponsored by ADT Commercial for Business. ADT Commercial serves businesses ranging from mid-sized organizations to large-scale enterprises. Think of them as a special team who has one focus, your business security. They provide a comprehensive line of security, fire, life safety, and risk management solutions, professional-grade systems for commercial-grade businesses. With ADT Commercial, every day is game day. Fortune 1000 companies rely on ADT Commercial for highly complex, scalable, integrated solutions that help solve their unique business challenges. And if you are looking for a partner to upgrade or take over the monitoring and service of your current system, ADT Commercial can help to painlessly install and maintain large-scale and multi-site businesses. No pain, that's good in sports and good in business security. Visit us today at ADT.com/special teams to learn more. The Dan Le Batard and Stugotz Show podcast is presented by Capital One. This is Banking Reimagined. ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. Ron Magill going to join us in just a second here on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Here's your SportsCenter update. The WWE has moved WrestleMania from Tampa to Orlando. They will hold the event at the WWE Performance Center in front of an empty crowd. The Kentucky Derby has been postponed and will be rescheduled for September 5th. And finally, a male baboon and his two wives ran wild in Australia after escaping from a medical facility where he was set to undergo a vasectomy. The baboons have since been captured, much to the male's chagrin. Damn it. It's having a good reading day right up until then. What are you laughing at?
I'm laughing at you. I'm laughing at you stumbling on the dismount of the last word. You're feeling good about yourself. You're feeling confident. You're like, I'm having a good reading day. Yeah. And then chagrin becomes chagrin and then becomes, damn it.
And now I got to say breakfast 5 times. Oh, jeez. Wendy's has breakfast now. We're talking fresh cracked eggs on every breakfast sandwich. Yep, it's going to be America's favorite breakfast. Download the Wendy's app for deals on your new favorite breakfast. Yep, for this, see you at Wendy's in the morning. Available at participating U.S. Wendy's. Why is Mike dancing back there? Did I said it right? 5 times? For all the latest headlines and information, tune in to SportsCenter on ESPN Radio all throughout the day.
He was happy for you. Mike Ryan roots for you. He does.
He sets the traps.
He doesn't have anything to do with Wendy's mass producing breakfast. Like that's not
a good point. Yeah.
He doesn't. Ron Magill is going to join us shortly here, but can you please explain to me, because I'm already a little bit Tom Brady'd out, why it is that you spent your quarantine as Tony mows through snacks? I know this is happening all over America. People are, taking the food that they brought home for 8 weeks and they're mowing through it. Why you over the weekend decided that you were going to do an all-decade team for all the major sports from the 80s on? Like, how bored were you?
I forgot I said that to Mike. I'm bored. So I did my all 80s hockey team, my 90s hockey team. I've done it for all 4 of the majors. I am now, Dan, all 4 of the major sports. I am now putting together my top 10 tennis players of all time, both men and women. And I am also putting together my top 10 golfers of all time. And here's another thing I'm doing. I've gotten so bored and stir crazy that, like the Chicago Bears, for example, I wrote down last night my all Chicago Bears team. How great is that? It is fun. I got Jim McMahon and sweetness. I mean, amazing, Willie Gold.
I look forward, when football slows down a little bit, I look forward to going through some of those because I really do feel like football needs to slow down for us so that we have something to talk about in 3 weeks because we're not going to have very much as soon as this is over.
No, what we'll have is my all Bears team. I mean, my all-time Bears team, my Lions team. I'll have all of them, Dan. All 4 of the major sports, I'll have an all-time team for every team just to get us through.
Do you mind reading that baboon story to Ron Magill so that I could get his reaction to it and so that he could tell us wonderful baboon stories? Just read the story again if you don't mind.
Yep. Scored still. And finally, a male baboon and his 2 wives ran wild in Australia after escaping from a medical facility where he was set to undergo a vasectomy. The baboons have since been captured, much to the male's chagrin.
How often have animals and do animals escape from your zoo, Ron?
No, not often at all. I mean, we have had an occasional hoof stock, and a small antelope or something kind of jump a moat, but nothing dangerous, and it's very, very infrequent. Every now and then you might have a flamingo catch a breeze. He opens his wings and it freaks out, and he waits to jump on the exhibit on his own again because they have such a flock instinct. They want to stay together. So, no, not like that.
Ron, obviously there's all sorts of misinformation out on the internet. Obviously we're all in quarantine and the corona pandemic is dominating the news cycle. In terms of the animal kingdom and our pets, there's all sorts of rumors and innuendo out there as to how this can affect our pets. Can you give voice to what the truth is here?
Sure. What the best of our knowledge now is that this is not something that can be transmitted to pets. There's no danger of transmitting it to pets, and there's no danger of pets transmitting it to you. Though the original beginnings of this virus is believed to come from bats, it's from an exotic animal from a faraway place. It is not something that's transmittable through domestic animals or animals found here in the United States.
Can you explain to us the link there that you mentioned with bats? You said thought to be involved.
Yeah, it's believed that bats basically, through their guano, a lot of times they'll pass a virus onto sometimes a crop or food, but also through the wild animal markets. That's a huge problem, especially in Asia. I've been in Asia where you go through a market like you go through a flea market here, except that our markets in Asia have a wide variety of wild animals that they pull out of the wild and they eat, or they use them for all types of medicinal purposes. It's one of the most heart-wrenching and, my personal opinion, disgusting things you could ever see is you see these wild animals in these horrible little tiny bamboo cages for consumption, for eating, or for use as medicine, to where they use different parts, whether they're using the bile of bears or the bile ducts of bears, or using, the gallbladders of different animals. It's horrific what they're doing. And, a great article just came out in the New York Times showing the links to the amount of development that's going on, cutting into forests, tropical forests, cutting down these forests and bringing out these animals and using them for medicines and foods, and how that has become a gateway for so many of these types of pandemics. Remember SARS, remember Ebola. These are all stuff that started from what we believe, whether it be bushmeat, whether it be going into these exotic areas and releasing these types of pandemics. So people need to understand that, even if you don't care about animals, even if you don't care about wild places, when you start invading these places, you're opening Pandora's box. And when you start consuming animals like this or using them for medicines like this, you are opening a petri dish that can affect what's happening to our world right now.
Stay clean. Which animals keep themselves the cleanest in the wild?
Believe it or not, most animals keep themselves pretty clean in the wild. I mean, everything, you can even talk about things like wild pigs, and people think that's an oxymoron, right? A pig, you're dirty as a pig. Most pigs actually really aren't that dirty. But when it comes to animals really keeping themselves clean, you would have to look at a lot of birds. Birds have to keep themselves clean because of the feathers, keep them free of mites, keep them good for flight. It's basically their strength to survival. So birds are constantly preening their feathers. They're bathing quite often, and they do keep themselves pretty clean. Primates groom each other quite a bit, so there's a bit of a cleaning factor going on there. Of course, cats are constantly grooming themselves also, but generally speaking, animals are fairly clean. Even vultures. People look at vultures, an animal that's eating dead, rotten flesh, and you think, oh my God, that's disgusting. In reality, vultures are not that disgusting in the way they keep themselves clean. They actually preen their feathers. The reason they don't have a lot of feathers on their head is so when they bury their head into a rotting carcass, it doesn't get a bunch of guts and grime and disgusting stuff all stuck to the feathers of their head. It's much easier to keep their bald head clean when they bury it into that, rotting carcass.
Tony, what do you have for Ron Magill, Tone?
Hey, Ron, do ants sleep?
That's a good question. I would suppose that they do sleep. And they probably just do it in a massive amount of shifts because there's always a part of an ant colony that's somewhat active. But I would suppose that they do sleep, and my suspicion is that, it's just in small spurts like most animals. A lot of animals do not sleep the way we sleep in the sense that, a solid 8 hours. They go through, small spurts of sleep throughout the day, basically as almost a point of survival.
Strange. Who would you say is the strangest sleeper? Like, I know you've told us sharks using half their brain and stuff.
Yeah, a lot of dolphins, Brady, and birds do that because they're birds that can remain in flight and actually let half of their brain go to sleep and the other half takes over for their flying capability. The same thing with, marine mammals that are underwater. They can still have one half of their brain working so they are able to surface and breathe when the other half is able to go to sleep. So different animals have different ways. I don't know what the strangest sleeper would be, though. You can look at things, everything from bats that, of course, hang upside down, and then you have bears and some mammals that go into a torpid state or hibernation, which can sleep for months at a time. So it just depends on the animal, but it's quite varied.
Billy, what do you have for Ron Magill?
Ron, how much of the animals at the zoo's routine is thrown off by this, if at all?
Well, that's a good question. Right now, it's not much of the routine thrown off because the keepers are coming in, and this coronavirus, the only thing that's really changing is that the lack of public to come into the park. The fact is we're still doing everything the same. They get a much different change of routine when we have to prepare for something like a hurricane, because then we're locking them up, then we're giving massive quantities of food, and they have to go for a couple of days. With the storm going through, that normal routine is disrupted. Right now they're going through their normal routine minus the public that's on the walkway, so it's not really a big disruption to them.
They don't prefer that we not be there?
No, I don't think they do. I think that there's some animals that are actually, oblivious to it. There's some animals that are somewhat entertained by it. There's an enrichment in looking at people coming through. And there's some animals that, get tired of it, but they always have the option of going to a place. All the exhibits are designed in such a way so animals can get out of sight line and kind of get some privacy when they want it.
Roy, what do you have for Ron Magill?
Ron, I have a rooster walking around my neighborhood. How can I get rid of it?
Well, that's a good question. That's an ongoing issue down here in Florida. We have, of course, Key West is just that was a big thing. Actually, I think went to the commission of Key West on how we kind of reduce these roosters because they're always, roosting or cock-a-doodle-dooing in the morning and keeping people awake. The reality is, trying to catch it is tough. You watch, there's so many funny videos on YouTube of people trying to catch a chicken or a rooster. Your best hope is that there's some natural predator like a coyote or a fox or something of that nature that might get it and eventually solve your problem.
Ron, stay safe. Good talking to you. We'll talk to you again next week.
Same to you, Dan. Take care. Bye-bye.
We ask you to support the people who support us. We will come back, I'm sure, with some Tom Brady talk.
Missed any of the show? You can listen to all 3 hours of the Dan Le Batard Show, plus our Miami-only hour and our Best of Podcast on Demand in the ESPN app. And subscribe to the Le Batard and Friends Podcast Network featuring South Beach Sessions, Stupidity, and Mystery Crate. Please rate and subscribe. New episodes are posted every week, wherever you get your podcasts.
We are trying to stay on the same content schedule during a quarantined and difficult time. The latest South Beach Session is a subject that we very much enjoy around here. It's the only thing that actually unites us. It is 90s baseball, and Tom Glavine tells stories about how disgusting Greg Maddux is. And Greg Maddux is disgusting. Like the things that Greg Maddux would do to people who played for the Braves, deeply, deeply unpleasant. You would not be allowed. If I did this stuff to you guys, I would immediately get fired. If anyone found out what Greg Maddux was doing during his heyday in the locker room. So that South Beach Session with Tom Glavine is out now, and you can get it. The big news of the day is obviously Tom Brady breaking up publicly with the Patriots. Bob Kraft is telling people now, he's putting his name. The Kraft family, Stugotz, the Kraft family put their name a couple of years ago publicly. They weren't doing this anonymously. They said Tom Brady will get to finish his career in New England the way that he pleases. Something along the line changed there, and now Bob Kraft is separating himself. He's been separating himself, right? He kept saying, I hope and pray that he is back. We plan on having him back. And now he's telling people, hey, this was not my decision. This was not our decision. I love him like a son. This is the decision of Tom Brady. And I really do think, Stugotz, as hard as it is to get the endings right in sports, Dwayne Wade took a bunch of discounts and then felt at the end, hey, give me my golden parachute. Let me stay here. And they offered him what was market value, but it was less than Chicago was offering. And Dwayne Wade didn't like. He felt disrespected. And I know the audience is listening to this, especially in this economic times where you've got, 12 million people in America who, work in the restaurant or the bar and the fast food industry. And Amazon is gobbling everything up now. Amazon has just hired 100,000 new people, part-time and full-time. 100,000 because they are taking up the internet business as everyone stays home. You have this situation where a guy is feeling disrespected because he keeps taking discounts. And how can you possibly feel disrespected if someone offers you $25 million a season? But clearly, Tom Brady felt somewhere within what was happening with New England, salary cap, keeping his value down, taking discounts, that they should have just made him feel more wanted. And I really do feel like he's going to regret this decision, Stugotz, because it's going to look weird to have him in another uniform. And beyond that, he's going to be 43 years old. Like, how good could he possibly be at that age? Even if all the pieces were perfect around him, how good could he possibly be at that advanced age when no quarterback has been any good at that age?
So, Dan, a couple of things. He's 18 months, I think, removed from outplaying on the road Patrick Mahomes in an AFC championship game. So, you think it's gone? That's it? He doesn't have that anymore because he's 18 months removed from doing that. He played better in that game than Patrick Mahomes did.
Stugotz, when will you be willing to say that he's done if the last 8 weeks of the season? Okay, so never. So he's going to be able to play till he's 50 years old then?
No, I mean, listen, I think he could still play at a pretty high level for a couple of more years. I think we also don't realize just how bad the skill position players around him last year in New England were. So I do think, Dan, it is going to be weird, okay? I'm not saying that it won't be weird, especially if he goes to a place like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. That will just be weird for a lot of people, and will also be weird that the last throw that Tom Brady ever made in a Patriots uniform was in a playoff game, and it was a pick six that went the other way. So all that stuff is going to be weird. I still think that on the right team, surrounded with the right talent, that Tom Brady could still make it to a Super Bowl. I do. I really do. So I don't know what team.
Jesus.
What, you don't think, Dan? I mean, how could you not think that's possible?
San Francisco might have been that team because they hid their quarterback throughout the postseason. Maybe you can make the argument on behalf of Tennessee, although Ryan Tannehill was a good deal better than Tom Brady last year. If you look at the numbers, Stugotz, if you look at the data, Tom Brady was one of the worst starting quarterbacks in the entire league the last 10 weeks of the season. He was like Trubisky, and Trubisky's about to get replaced. The decline is supposed to be precipitous at 37, 38, 39 years old. It was precipitous for Tom Brady last year. And yes, I agree with you. It hurts not to have Gronk. It hurts not to have Antonio Brown. He would have been helped by great skill position players. But I thought there was only one team in the league that he could go to that would make that interesting, and it was San Francisco because of the way they could run the ball and because of the way Kyle Shanahan can scheme it up so that anybody can play quarterback.
Here's what I keep hearing, though, that there are teams, now that Brady has made it official that he is no longer going to New England or going to play for the Patriots, that there are teams that might be willing, that already have good quarterbacks, that might be willing to come, good teams, that might be coming out of the woodworks here to get Tom Brady. I mean, that's what all the reporters at our network are saying and all the reporters are saying. So if put on the right team, I'm asking you, if put on the right team with the right talent surrounding him, you don't think that's in a weird sport like the NFL and football, you don't think that team led by Tom Brady could get to a Super Bowl?
No, I think he's done. I think that the last 10 weeks of last season, when he was one of the worst quarterbacks in the entire league statistically, I think he's done, and he's going to regret this ending, because it's going to come with a lot of physical pain. It's going to come with emotional pain, and it's not going to be something that's anywhere near winning. We are going to switch gears here and talk a little bit about what these professional sports teams owe their low-wage earners and how badly the Marlins are handling some of this as the Miami Heat tries to come up with a plan here locally. We're going to talk to David Samson, the former Marlins team president, about some of the things that organizations can do for their low-wage workers at a time that everyone's worried about the economy next.
ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. Former Marlins team president David Samson going to join us in just a second here on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Here's your SportsCenter update. The WWE has moved WrestleMania from Tampa to Orlando. They will hold the event at the WWE Performance Center in front of an empty crowd. The Kentucky Derby has been postponed with a possible rescheduling for September 5th. And finally, a golden retriever puppy in Michigan has been branded a unicorn due to an unusual facial feature, having only a single ear positioned on the top of her head. Ray, ear spelled backwards, was brought to a vet as a newborn because she required emergency surgery. The dog's existing ear was originally on the side of her head, but started rising to the top after her surgery. SportsCenter is brought to you by Bolt 24. An athlete is an athlete 24/7, and part of always being prepared is always being hydrated. Bolt 24 has antioxidant vitamins A and C, electrolytes from watermelon and sea salt, and no artificial sweeteners or flavors. Bolt 24 is all-day hydration for all-day athletes. For all the latest headlines and information, tune in to SportsCenter on ESPN Radio all throughout the day.
Cam Newton is done in Carolina. Chris Mortensen reporting the Panthers and Teddy Bridgewater are negotiating a 3-year, $60 million or so contract. It's not done. There are details to be worked out, but when the new league year opens, according to Mort, on Wednesday, Teddy Bridgewater will be the new quarterback in Carolina as they overhaul everything there. Cam Newton will now become available. David Samson has a podcast, Nothing Personal with David Samson. It's got a lot of talk that you don't normally hear from an executive, and it's a lot of things that feel unclean sometimes, because a lot of executives will clean things up in the way they look in public. And so I wanted to go to him on what it is that's happening with all these teams that are getting pressure to compensate their hourly workers. Thank you for joining us, David. Can you explain to us first off, because I don't really even understand much of any of this, when teams say they're going to compensate their hourly workers, like, what does that mean exactly?
So I don't think they even know what it means exactly. Hourly workers are actually mostly employed by security companies or a concessionaire company, or sometimes even you outsource your parking and they're county employees or city employees. You also have police who are working overtime and count on that overtime, and fire rescue. So there's all sorts of people needed to put on an event. When these sorts of things happen, whether it's a hurricane or anything that cancels games, teams' initial reaction, and I did this as well, is to do an immediate donation of $100,000 or $250,000 to an organization like Red Cross, who has an opportunity to actually help people in need. With coronavirus, it's a little different because we're talking about economic hardship in terms of lost paychecks. So teams are a little ahead of themselves when they just say, hey, I'm going to donate $100,000 or $500,000, or I'm going to pay everybody their hourly rate. What does that mean? You can't identify who the people are, because the people who flip your burgers come from a pool of people. So who wins the hourly check?
So how does this work? How do the calculations get done, and how does the money actually get into the hands of the people who need it?
So that is the perfect question. So what I would do if I were still with the Marlins, I would contact the unions who represent many of the workers, and then the companies who actually find the hourly workers. And I would get money to those companies because they're the ones who actually have the timesheets. They're the ones who have the names. And then I would work with those companies on a criteria for who we are going to give money to. But I've got to come up with a number. I can't just blanket say, hey, I'm going to pay everybody their hourly rate as though we were having games. It just won't work that way practically.
Major League Baseball did make $1 million donation to fight hunger as a result of school closures. What are you laughing at there? It was MLB and the MLBPA. You don't think that that's a number worth celebrating?
Hey, can I have $10 from you?
$10?
Do you have an extra in your pocket right now? Listen, it's tough for baseball. I get it. I was there. Coming up with numbers, it's very hard. There is a lot of money in there, Kitty. It's an $11 billion industry, and I know they've secreted away between the union and the Major League Baseball. You're talking about $600 or $700 million that is just literally being in an investment account. And for me, $1 million when you've got your players who are doing $100,000, and I'm doing $100,000 myself through an ML Beer Challenge to each of the community foundations, I just think baseball should have had a different number that was based on something they're doing. So they did it to try hunger for school children who are not in school and not eating. I get it, but let's be more specific. We could have worked with each of the 30 cities and helped the public school districts in each one with the gift toward those public school districts for X number of meals, and the number should have been higher.
Hold on a second. How much is in that, Kitty?
Hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. Hundreds.
And what is that? What is that there for? To do what?
It's there in case baseball has if there's a strike, if there's a lockout, if there is a need for baseball to step in and run a team or to lend money to teams if they need. This was created actually back in 2002 with the transaction that we were all involved in, selling the Expos to baseball and buying the Marlins from John Henry, who then bought the Red Sox from the Yawkey Trust. And it's just continued to build because each year baseball does not give to its owners all the national money that it collects. It keeps a portion back. It's called the withholding, and that money builds and builds and builds. And that's to say nothing of the money the individual teams have that they could be donating as well.
What is an owner's responsibility in the face of something this unprecedented?
I think you've got to stand up and take the microphone and say that you are working on trying to do the best you can, and you're going to have specific details, and then you work with your team president and with your HR department and with your partners, and you then announce a concrete plan, because the worst thing right now for me is to have hourly workers or people who are servers in bars and restaurants around these arenas believe that they're going to get an hourly paycheck from a team or from a player who stepped up, but they're not at the end of the day. So I think honesty is necessary, and just if you don't want to do it, don't do it. But if you're going to do it, then at least have a plan that logistically can actually work.
What are your thoughts on the commissioner's leadership throughout this?
Oh, Dan. I mean, listen, he's a friend, and I was there when he got elected. I just think he's been a step behind, and I think it's hard right now. I don't think he ever dreamt that this would be as bad as it was, but it just means he wasn't paying attention and didn't want to hear it. So I think his head was in the sand a bit. It's amazing that we all had to wait for Rudy Gobert to test positive, and then all this started happening. That was still 2 to 3 weeks too late, but MLB waited even longer than that. The NBA acted in 4 minutes after Rudy Gobert tested positive because they were ready, and I'm not sure what baseball was doing.
Nothing Personal is the name of the podcast with David Samson. You're a germaphobe. How are you dealing with everything that's happening right now?
I mean, this is a Tuesday for me. I mean, I live as though there's coronavirus every day. So I have a full supply of sanitizer, toilet paper, tissues, Kleenex, paper towels, napkins. I have a year's supply always. So I'm doing fine. I'm not going on eBay and selling it. I've actually given away to people who have needed it, and I have no problem with that. But this is a normal for me, Dan.
What is the Major League Beard Challenge that you said? What are the details of that?
So thanks. Yeah, I said yesterday and announced that I'm going to give $1,000 a day for every day that MLB, until MLB's opening day, to a maximum of $100,000. And the first $30,000 will be $1,000 to each team's community foundation, because those are the foundations that are actually better prepared to help their community and their workers who are suffering. And then the last $70,000, if MLB's gone for 100 days, which it likely will be to local South Florida foundations who can get money to people who have suffered. And since it's been announced, it's growing, no pun intended. And I'm not going to shave until opening day, but I'm hearing from people on my Twitter David P. Samson saying, hey, can you help me? I have no job. And it's just heartbreaking. It's hard to help everyone, which is why honesty matters.
Are the Marlins going to do anything for their low-wage employees?
Where have they been? It would be nice, right? Wouldn't it be nice for them to stand up and actually take the mic and have Derek say something that actually means something instead of just putzing around and waiting for someone to do something or for something to be mandated? And it doesn't have to be that he takes care of everyone, or he can take care of no one. But what they're doing now is the silence is actually deafening. And if they're working on a program, say you're working on a program. If you're not, say you're not. I just don't know why they're doing what they're doing. The Marlins hourly employees are contacting me on Twitter saying, hey, I know you were fired 3 years ago, but is there any way that I can be a part of this challenge and you can get money to our employees?
Nothing Personal with David Samson is the podcast. It is not normal for an executive to talk the way that he has talked about some of the things that he talks about. So check that out. Thank you, David. We appreciate the time.
Thank you, guys. Have a great day.
Stugotz Casper Mattresses. I can tell you, by the way, that the Miami Heat are working on a plan. I know a lot of people rushed to microphones at the beginning to say that they were going to help their low-wage employees, but the Miami Heat will have some sort of announcement here shortly about a plan that they have in order to help their employees during this time. I have not heard any such thing from the Marlins, and the Marlins could use a little bit of pressure on that front, although I don't think it's going to do any good. I can't hear everything that Chris and Billy are saying because we are on remote. Stugotz is at his house. I'm at my house. Everybody's at their house. Roy's got a baby playing a piano. Chris has got a screaming baby running around. There are dogs barking and cats meowing. So I didn't hear what Billy and Chris were saying, but I can imagine that it was mocking David Samson, mocking me. They are Marlins fans, and I'm curious, what is it that you guys were saying? Because you were on mute. I couldn't hear you.
Well, you're saying how the Heat are going to have a plan for their people, and they've already missed games. But then you're taking out the Marlins, who haven't even missed games yet, and you're taking them out, saying that they're not going to do anything. Well, we don't know that they aren't, although they probably won't.
I don't know that any baseball teams, there have been a lot so far that have come out and said what they're doing for their part-time employees. Like, baseball season hasn't started yet. There's still 2 weeks before a lot of them would have gotten paid, so they have some time to figure it out. But, there's Dan Le Batard taking shots at the Marlins again, ruining any possible relationship with that team in the future. And poor Mickey over here, who's lost all this boat money. We feel bad for him. And, it's all right. The Heat employee, they're going to do something maybe eventually. We'll figure it out.
They are.
The season's going to be over soon.
They are going to do something. They are planning to do something in the next couple of days. And you know good and well, Billy, the Marlins aren't going to do anything. Stugotz is laughing in your face.
It's not like Mickey's booking cruises right now. What's he doing? Figure it out, Mickey.
Right, we're all sitting around quarantined. I mean, Mickey, let's go. I mean, how many days do you need to figure out your plan to take care of your employees? Enough of this Heat stuff. And now the Marlins aren't planning to do something. You never know what Chiefs will step up and do.
Samson always coming out saying what he would have done differently. This is what he would have done. He would have charged them vacation days. He would have charged them something. He would have said if they went home with their uniforms that they took their uniforms against the rules. I mean, enough already.
I can't believe. Look at Billy's legitimately mad. I am looking in his face, and he's legitimately steaming.
I like fairness, Dan Le Batard. I have a minor in journalism.
And so what is the fairness that you are calling for? Explain to me the exact fairness that you're calling for, because you know good and well the Marlins ain't doing bleep for their employees.
No, I don't know that. The season hasn't started yet. It's unfair to say that they're not going to do anything when they haven't missed any games yet. Give them time to figure it out. There's a lot going on in the world. It's not like their guys are going in and clocking in for work and not getting paid, or they haven't been able to. There haven't been any games yet.
Dan, I think here's the problem. I think you're sitting there having this schmooze fest with David Samson, and what Billy knows is that, and this you could take to the bank, that if David Samson were running the Marlins definitely wouldn't do anything for the employees. That's the problem Billy's having right now.
Why is David Samson so bitter towards the Marlins? They gave him $1 billion.
It's true.
You should have asked. Why didn't you ask? Why didn't you jump in there and rough him up while I was sitting there laying on my back, allowing him to rub my belly? Why didn't you get in there and rough him up?
I couldn't hear anything he was saying.
Did my boat money joke get on the air?
right. We're going to try and figure out in the coming days how to get all this stuff right. Look at Roy's sour face. Roy, what are you sour about? What's the matter? The Claire's been playing the piano all show. What are you mad about?
Oh, man, I'm just watching her. Man, I think I got corona, actually. I think I got it.
Wow, that took a dark turn all of a sudden.
Yeah.
It's good thing you're quarantined, I guess.
Yeah, I guess.
Probably put the baby down.
Okay. I think Tony gave it to you. Very good, Roy. That is the dismount that we needed today on the day that Tom Brady breaks up with the Patriots. Do you have, Stugotz, do you have hope today? Because I remember a year ago at about this time, you and Mike were awfully loud about Le'Veon Bell and the things the Browns had done. And I saw a whole bunch of teams doing the same kinds of things that got you and Mike all excited about the Jets and Browns last year. And that blew up in both your faces.
Yeah, of course I have hope. I think, I'm not certain, and this ain't saying much, but I think I have the best quarterback in the AFC East. This is exciting. The Jets are back.
You think, does he have the best quarterback in the AFC East? What a cruddy division.
I'll take Edelman.
Tom Brady is going to come back to one of these teams and still be the best team in the East. We'll talk to you tomorrow.